A warm welcome to this preview of Battalion S3, Operations and Training, the new magazine for the Battalion Combat Series from MMPGamers, MMMP, who have just put it on pre-order just a week ago, and it's already nearly made its number. I'm absolutely delighted. Personally, I guess I should mention two things. So first of all, I have some personal involvement in this. I've written some of the articles for the magazine side. And secondly, it's still being laid out. So we know it's going to be 40 pages long, but how they're all going to be jiggled together and whether there's only any tiny tweaks to the game because it's in very late playtesting to be seen. But it's substantially very much getting there with MMP's very hard work. So it's a game and it's a magazine. The game is just a nice straightforward one mapper, 5 scenarios, under 200 counters. The counters are, big AeroCorps style counters. You just make it less threatening for, the newbies who you want to introduce to the game. A couple of charts and tables. Obviously, there's the game specific rules and there's notes and the scenarios and there's notes on historical context, design notes, order of battle notes, because, Carl loves his order of battle. I mean, actually, so do I. I've spent quite a lot of my childhood doing orders of battle. I've done 4 articles, an extended exploration of combat that's richly illustrated so that you can step into the mind of someone trying to work out how to bring everything together to do the combat. So it's not just, how do I do the CTR and how do I do the mods? It's how do I do combat in the round so that I can, win. In a similar vein, there's an article about how to activate your formations and how to decide which to do first. I remember Carl telling me that many people struggle with I've got the first activation. Who do I activate now? Kind of question. And to support that, I've done an article on assessing your balance of forces. How can you look at a formation and just understand really quickly what it's capable for? I thought I'd have to do quite a lot of bean counting for that. And in fact, I did do the bean counting and it turned out to be completely unnecessary because actually there are just a few number of heuristics, rules of thumb that you can apply that will give you a really good picture of what each formation can do. And then finally, I've done a cheat sheet for supply to try and bring in all of the different sort of supply consequences and rules, what's an MSR and all of that into one ready reference place. So that's kind of like the outline of what it is. What is it for? Well, it's to be enjoyed. It's essentially a day game. I mean, God, I love Panzer's Last Stand and all the big ones, Here they are, all my lovelies. And they're absolutely great, but, just occasionally, I don't have 4, 5, 7 days locked away to play with them with my friends. So a day game is really, really nice to have. And indeed, some of the small scenarios, just an evening game for you to have fun. Secondly, it's there very much to support you teaching your non-BCS friends, whoever the heck they are, in how to do the game in a very simple manner so that we can, grow the tribe. It's also primarily for me, really, an easy refresher. So, I mean, what this may happen to you, I don't know, but I go up, my friends say, oh, look, there's a new OCS I have to play, or we've never done the 7 Years' War. Let's go do the Battles of the Age of Reason. And then suddenly it's 18 months since I last actually touched a BCS game. And so I have to get my head back into it. And this is absolutely designed to take you there. Hopefully it's there to allow you to learn some stuff and let you play the game better. And of course, it's on pre-order, 25% off. So who doesn't like 25% off as well? What a bargain. That's what it's for. You may say, well, we already have AeroCorps. So where does Danger Forward fit into this? And for those of you who, obviously recognize British absurdist humor from the 1970s, this is Monty Python. And I like Danger Forward to their seminal fish slapping dance sketch, in which One of them goes up with a couple of small fish and smacks the guy around, and then John Cleese comes back with a giant fish and knocks him into the water. And that's kind of sort of what happens. I mean, I'm stretching a point, obviously, but you know, the Germans and the Italians can go up and they can do a lot of fish slapping. And then if you manage your Americans correctly, you may just wallop them. And Arrow in contrast, is the town's Women's Guild recreation of the Battle of Pearl Harbor, which is essentially a mud fight. A huge mess of intertwined forces coming in and going all over the place, and it's quite boom. And I think, therefore, that actually Danger Forward, with its slap and counter slap, is probably the better game for learning. And if I was going to teach somebody, I would definitely start them on Danger Forward and then move them onto Arrow for their next bite at the cherry. Would you fancy a little look at the game? Of course you would. Here is the map. Over here is Gela. And actually, just to give you some context, let me show you the whole island of Sicily. Here's the invasion of Sicily, Operation Husky. We are seeing from about here to about there. So this is our sector of the front. In front of us, or up in the hills, is the Hermann Göring Panzer Division, and the bulk of Livorno is just off to the left. Things to note about the map is, well, first of all, there's this whopping great big clunk of difficult hilly and mountainous terrain, which is only crossed in one or two places on the coast, down by Pescari Station and here at Acat. So that sort of divides the map into a southern and a northern feature, which is accentuated by the fact that in the north you have Dine Beach and in the south you have the Cent Beach. Play is kind of balanced between these two. Next up, you'll notice that there are a lot of entry hexes. Down here and down here and over here and over there and up here, 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 and here, as well as, of course, the invasion beaches themselves. This is very much a kind of meeting encounter via an invasion. A lot can happen with a lot of variation in how things go. Next up, let's look at the units. And we'll emphasize the Allied ones here in blue. So let's zoom in over here, over on Dine Beach. We have two formations, Force X, slightly mysterious sounding, and the big red one, the 1st US Infantry Division. It's supported by a whole set of light cruisers and destroyers for extra artillery, as if Americans didn't need any more artillery in this world. They are faced in this sector by these Italian coast defense companies that are all static and, you know, are everything that you've come to expect from zero strength coast defense. I mean, they're a nuisance, but little else. Then if we just scroll up, you can see that there's the forward elements of Livorno over here. Now, the bulk of Livorno comes in the second turn. You can also see there are a few of these defensive battalions spread at various points across the map. This will become more obviously important in a moment when we consider the 82nd Airborne. The other big one is Hermann Göring. So Hermann Göring comes in at C or at D, and the PZ Kampfgruppen can come in on C or D, and the Panzergrenadier Kampfgruppen can come in on C or D, but they both can't come in on the same one. So you have to decide which one is going to go where. So don't allow the fact that the PZs are here and the PGs are over there. They can swap around if you wish. And as you can see, Hermann Göring, the first thing it needs to do when it comes on is go for a bit of a drive. Oh, look at these lovely little twisty mountain roads chicaning all over the place. What a pleasant view. Unfortunately, let's say a cheery hello to the 82nd Airborne Division. Now, this is going to land at night, and it's not going to go well in terms of a textbook parachute landing. I mean, do they ever go well? So there are a number of drop zones. So there's Q and S and T. And the only thing you can say with any confidence whatsoever is that none of these infantry airborne companies are going to land on the actual drop zone. So you've got to do the old classic scatter. Roll once for which direction it's going to go, and then roll a second time for how far away from the drop zone. So there's a huge amount of variability here because they could land all over the place, and some of the places they could land will be very annoying. I mean, very, very annoying for the Germans, and will have a huge impact on the game. So right from the beginning, you just don't know how it's going to go. You know, if you get some paratroopers on the road up here, then that's really annoying. If you get them on this road here, then that might make coming down this road difficult. Obviously, there's the one down here. You might find they don't land on this road at all. They land in move mode, so they don't have a zone of control. First activation is going to be really important because you desperately want, as the Americans, to get the 82nd Airborne to activate first so it can flip, move on its move side and project zones of control to be even more irritating. Now, bad news, they're all one-step units. Good news, they're all high-quality one-step units. But yeah, how it's going to go is always going to be up in the air. If we just flip our attention back to the Allies, down on Dine Beach, you've got the 45th Infantry Division. Now, this is a relatively mediocre, well-trained, but in or still sort of green infantry division, so its ARs are only 3s and 2s. But luckily, the forces that it has reined against it are even less and more anemic. And indeed, they have some nice light cruisers and indeed a Royal Navy Monitor, HMS Abercrombie, if you fancy having some 15-inch guns on your side. They potentially have interesting options in the south, and that's one of the features of the game. You have the Allies pushing up from the beaches. You have the Axis, you have the Germans and the Italians coming down from the mountains. You have Allied reinforcements, so aside from the paratroopers, you have Task Force Cool. Yeah, there's a joke to be made there, and I do make it in my article. And in addition, this is on turn 2, in addition, you get a little bit of very, very welcome armor as well. The Americans get substantially beefed up. In comparison, not so much. Now, all right, fair enough. Livorno does get a big wallop of extra strength to flesh out some of its units. I particularly love these ones over here. Let's just zoom in here because these guys are in the middle of 1943 and they are driving museum pieces. Shocking. For anybody who suggests that the Italian army wasn't full of very brave people, some of these things are insanely bad. There is this Commisso group that comes in on E. So E is over here, then pretty weak. And actually, I guess that's a feature, which is that both sides, in many ways, are, a little bit weak. The Allies haven't got their full oomph. They've literally just stepped off the landing craft. So a lot of their heavy equipment, particularly their armor, isn't available for them just yet. The Axis are slightly caught off the hop. They're still, rebuilding themselves from losses in Tunisia. And they're working all in this very lumpy terrain with all of this stuff, this olive things are orchards, olive trees, I would hazard a guess. And so, yeah, here's the terrain effects chart. Should you want to have a quick pause and look at that. Classic stuff, nothing too scary, but the orchards do create a lot of blocking terrain, and the rough and mountain are a nuisance as well. Supply should be relatively easy. If I turn off the units, these white stars are American supply sources, 3 on each of the 2 beaches, plus down in the south at Scoliti, apparently means rocks, and there's another one there. So pretty straightforward for the Allies. For the Germans, there's a significant one down here near Comiso, which is on a secondary road. There's one with a track here. In the north, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 secondary roads, plus a 5th over on A, as well as local supply sources. So supply ought not to be, famous last words in BCS, but ought not to be a problem. However, the map is too big for the forces, so there may well not be a tight front line. Dine Beach is for the Allies, just put the troops back on, where a lot of the fun is. If we look at the victory conditions, they're these, if we turn the units off, they're these yellow stars, but in this vassal model, they're with the red hexagons as well. So obviously there's 2. Jella itself and Jella's landing airbase here are within easy reach. And then there's another 3 up to the north, whereas down in the south, there are 3. The mission for the Allies is simply to get 6 or more of these 8. The mission for the Axis is to make sure that the Allies only get a couple, which presents lots and lots of opportunities. For example, if you are a sudden rush of blood to the head kind of a player, you could bring your Hermann Görings down this way and try and knock out, or at least damage, Force X, or alternatively come down and try and take on the 1st Infantry and hold on to one or both of these 2 victory point hexes using your great mobility to come out of the blue, for example. You could count, well, if I pile in all of my effort in the north, I could have these 5 or at least 4 of these victory hexes, and then 1 or 2 down here, boom, all sorted. Alternatively, you could think to yourself, wouldn't it be great if I could just pop down here and then go to here and then boom, as well as bring these guys down here and boom as well, and go and kick the weaker guy. And then you can say to yourself, well, I could potentially get 3 out of these 3 VPs here. And then if Livorno keeps its head and keeps those 3 up there, well, that sounds like 6 to me. So easy peasy. Trouble is, the Americans get a vote too. So in amongst these exciting opportunities, I've already highlighted the mayhem, the absolute mayhem that the 82nd could bring on this kind of pattern. Even if they don't go first, even if the Germans get the first player activations, which is problematic because over here on the turn track, on turn 10th of July, the Axis snafu roll is at -2. Ooh. Even if they get lucky, that would just mean that the 82nd lands behind them. And so what seemed like a really good idea could mean suddenly you have a whole rich smattering of annoying airborne units all over the place. Secondly, the artillery power of the Americans is not to be sniffed at. The 45th Infantry has 3 artillery points, and there's another 3 artillery points on the naval gunfire that's available. So trying to tackle these guys anywhere near the beach is potentially challenging. Likewise, in the north, the 1st Infantry has 3 and Force X has an additional 1, And then there are another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 artillery. So there's a really large concentration of artillery, classically for the Americans. And of course, inevitably, the Axis don't have nearly as much artillery available. I think that's it in a nutshell, really. The Axis can do whatever they like, subject to the 82nd, but they can't do everything. The Americans can do a lot, just, you know, nice and steady, and demonstrate how to push forward with artillery-backed infantry. If you have more hair than I do be careful. There is potentially an awful lot of head scratching in this game. And just finally, I just want to acknowledge the help that I did. I had an absolute ball writing stuff for this magazine, but I could not have done a great job without my friend from many decades, John Clifford, who has an absolute iron grip on the rules. You know, I'm a good explainer. I'm not necessarily a good rules lawyer. And he is a pedant of the First Order, which, you know, again, with my expressive and sloppy ways, is a really useful way to put me on a leash a bit. Heinrich Hoff, wonderful OCS player, came along with a certain BCS curiosity, that really, really valuable Emperor's New Clothes. Why is that like that? Plus, I've said English as a second language, but, you know, massively impressive English. And then, of course, Carl for asking me to do this, and his patience whilst I got very excited and then over-delivered and had a great fun time. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on this and play the game. Play the game and enjoy the game. If you haven't pre-ordered it, come on now, get on with it. This is not only going to be a great addition to the BCS stable, but the success of this means the success of issue 2 will be guaranteed in a year or 18 months' time. Probably the same sort of sequence of publishing as Operation Matters is for OCS. And I think that's a lovely way of interspersing some of the huge games that drop on us with some further interest in the hobby that we love. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you order it. Bye for now.